Hi, good day. My name is Sibonelo Mbata. I'm the co-founder of PetroCONNECT. We do know that as a dealer at some point in your life, you may have to sell your site. It can become quite a daunting exercise. And a lot of you actually have never been to a process of selling a site. You've only bought it when you got into your site at the moment. And many of you actually underestimate the amount of work it actually takes just to conclude this entire transaction. And that is why we decided to just put this little video just to take you through the whole process of what it takes. And hopefully you may want us to partner with you when you go through this journey.
Thanks, Bonella. And I'm Mark Harper, also co-founder of PetroCONNECT. And I think, as Bonella says, it's really to take you through this journey, because it really does become a journey. Because you've been on a journey within the fuel retail industry, and that is across whatever oil company you find yourself with, and hence why we're wanting to take you through this general site sale process of what happens pre the sale process and what happens before we get to actually getting an appointment made of a potential retailer for your service station. What happens once someone's been appointed, because that's really where the journey really gets to the hard yards.
Sure.
Once a person's been appointed, there's another whole lot of processes to ensue from your finance and the various other processes and retail license that needs to go on, and then getting through to the actual takeover, which is also another process. So we really just want to take you through those various places of the process today and sort of go into them a little bit deeper, but also give you a better understanding as to why the journey and why partnership with PetroCONNECT is fundamental during something like a site sale transaction, and also to explain that there's no exclusion of any party within this transaction. So every oil company is very much paramount to the site sale transaction, because ultimately the oil company, being your franchisor, is responsible for the appointment of the retailer and making sure that they are happy with the person that they will be partnering with at the service station and becoming their retailer of choice. But ultimately, there's a lot of legal process, there's a lot of decisions that have to get made along the way. There's a lot of transparency that you need to see from us along the way. There's a lot of money that needs to be brought up from a buyer's side of things. And the takeover process is also one that is not the most sort of simple process and can be a very painful process.
Yeah. You see, many times, Mark, dealers would actually ask you a question like where, like PetroCONNECT, would we get the buyers? Do you guys have buyers, So those are some of the things that people worry about. And a lot of dealers actually also worry about the valuation, So can you just take us into, do you have the list of people that can, potentially be able to buy the service stations?
Always the question, isn't it, Sibonelo? But yes, I think short answer. But I think from a buyer's perspective, buyers always are sent through to an oil company who are ultimately responsible for that final appointment of a retailer. We have developed the PetroCONNECT Academy, and there is a very large number of alumni that have developed and have really gone on to greater heights, and we've successfully been through the process, and a number of very successful retailers on the ground now that have been through the whole PetroCONNECT process from start to finish, which is fantastic to be able to share. But those retailers have been through the readiness program, which is a 2-week readiness program that really gives one the ins and outs of running a service station.
Yeah.
Is this really for me as a potential candidate for a service station? Once you've been through that, you get into this pool, but there's a whole bunch of other checks that you need to go through from unencumbered capital.
So that's the one I wanted to know.
Do you want to see
Do
the
they
checks?
have money? Do they? Because as a dealer, I really don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my time with somebody.
What do you want to sell?
That I just want to sell my site, right? Do they have money? Yes or no?
Yeah. That's the thing that we check. So there is proof of unencumbered capital. It is part of our legal process, hence why we have an internal legal team. And that's an internal legal team employed by PetroCONNECT, from senior legal counsel down to legal assistants that are assisting all the way through this process to ensure that there is proper proof of unencumbered capital when they come into our process.
I want to ask you this question. Don't answer me like a politician. Do they meet the minimum BE requirements?
Absolutely.
Okay.
BE requirements obviously is extremely important when it comes to currently where we are as an industry, and currently what the oil companies are all looking for. We are encouraging partnerships, and I think, when we look at this term unencumbered capital, it all is very much relative, because a 5 million rand service station versus a 15 million rand service station are very different amounts of unencumbered capital. Hence why we also have a legal team who assists with putting together those partnership agreements, assists with putting the business structures together. So if the person has been through this process, it's a matter of then assisting them post the process, which we'll have a look at just now, as to once they've been appointed, to actually go through that with them, and ensuring that a fair process is ensued afterwards.
Last question, just more clarity here. Because as a dealer, I just want to be sure that if I partner with you guys, you know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Now, do you guys appoint this person, or does the oil company appoint?
Absolutely, the oil company that appoints the retailer.
All right. So you'd actually send them, all these people, to the oil company. The oil company will do their own vetting, which is over and above the vetting that we've already done. And they choose one. Okay.
So depending on the oil company, remember, valuations sometimes are done by the oil company, and sometimes valuations are attended to by
That's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go there. But now that we're there already, now tell me, because here's the other problem. You guys, who exactly do you represent? Because do you do the valuation, and when the valuation is done, how sure am I as a dealer that the valuation is fair? Who checks this?
So I feel like I'm on an interview here. I'm being tested here. But absolutely, the valuation has to be done 100% fairly. So if a valuation has been taken care of by PetroCONNECT, we take on a whole track and trace process, first of all, to just go back in terms of the sale process. We then take on a process of every document, your source documents that we go into. We understand that management accounts, financials, all those sort of things are important in this process, but from a source documentation perspective, it's very important for us to see this, and for us to have industry knowledge, which we have experts as well as part of our team, an accounting team, because we have an internal accounting team that handles these valuations. Once those valuations are put together, and that fair valuation is put together, we have to ensure that every party is going to be able to align to that and signed off by the oil company. That's the first thing. And second thing, this is going to have to be funded eventually.
So that's the important part, because remember, as a dealer, I want to be sure that you guys are not driving my value down.
Absolutely.
But also as a buyer, I want to be sure that the value is not inflated. So what you're saying to me is that when PetroCONNECT does the valuation, it still goes through other bodies for a second and third check.
Absolutely. That has to happen, and I think it is one thing that we can stand by as PetroCONNECT. It is part of our ethics, it's part of our policies. You cannot increase evaluation purely because you're looking out for this one, looking out for that one, looking out for that one. It has to be done fairly, because it has to go through a number of checks, including the oil company, including the bank, which is ultimately the institution that has to fund these transactions and has money on the line and risk on the line.
Can I ask you an uncomfortable question?
Sure.
You guys are very much pro-transformation, and as a dealer, how sure am I? Can you put me in it? Like, can I be comfortable enough to know that you are not going to be driving my value down because you want to put transformation candidates in my site?
I think it's one thing that as PetroCONNECT, we've stood by right from the start when we started PetroCONNECT, is to say everything has to be done fairly. Let's take colour out of this. Let's look at this as there's a seller, there's a buyer. Take the colour out of it. Let's look at a fair transaction for a seller, a fair transaction for a buyer.
Sure.
A buyer is coming in as a business person,
Yeah.
a seller is exiting as a business person.
Okay.
In many cases, a seller, by the way, is exiting and has now got no business to go to, or the seller is exiting and is retiring.
Yeah.
So we cannot be driving values down, but we also can't be driving values up, because at the end of the day, you still have to make sure that the incoming person is going to be sustainable and can manage that site effectively. And with a lot of what we've been through over these past number of years, or past couple of years rather, it has been a rather tricky time when it comes to valuations because of what we've been through.
COVID.
Yeah, well, I don't know, the list can go on, hey?
Looting.
From COVID to looting to flooding, yeah.
I think that really does bring about some comfort, right? So when the valuation is done and it's been signed off by the oil company first and foremost, and secondly by the financial institution, where to from here?
So I think obviously part of the valuation process and that being signed off, we have to now go to advertisement stage.
Sure.
So your oil company in the main does have an advertisement process, and many have their own websites and go through an advertisement process. We also have an advertising platform, and that reaches many parties.
Sure.
And one of the main the main parts of what PetroCONNECT does is advertising to our alumni.
Sure.
And the PetroCONNECT alumni is a closed group that obviously have been through that whole vetting process that we spoke about. And going through that process with them, they are then able to ask questions, and we're able to then guide them through that particular opportunity. They had to have been through a strict compliance process, from non-disclosure agreements to ensuring that they are on the system, to ensuring that we have captured them onto the system. So we are not sharing information about any particular site or retailer without consent and without them being part of our process.
Okay. So the oil company, so you advertise the oil company shortlist. They take 3 to interview, however many they choose to.
Yep.
And eventually they come to an appointment. So they appoint one and take us from there.
So just to rewind a little bit, there is where someone has been shortlisted. In many cases, there's cash flows and business plans that one needs to plan with.
Sure.
And I think PetroCONNECT has really been able to guide a lot of new retailers through this process, because it can be a hectic process when you don't know. I think one thing that we are very much built on is not giving something to someone and saying, well, here's your plan, here's your cash flow, just go and present it. It's about guiding, because otherwise you're given something and you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
And again, that's why the readiness program goes through business plan and cash flows. Sure. Once the person has been appointed, that's when we now head to the next stage of this journey, which is obviously one of the interesting parts of the journey, because we're now going through a bunch of other parts of the legal process, and we'll then be taking you through that journey now as to what our legal team does, what our ops excellence team does,
due diligence,
and the due diligence process, and why all our systems and platforms and the technology that we use also assists buyers and sellers through.